Toebiter. So, you want to catch monsters? Marcus paused for dramatic effect, holding the flashlight under his chin. Skylar, Red, and I had just been caught by our sleepover sitter not even 10 minutes ago for sneaking around the house, trying to get out to the abandoned train yard to catch Pokemon. Our sitter, and Red's sister, Katie, started this little timeout as a scolding, and warned Skylar and me that she would have a word with our parents for our misbehavior. But Katie's boyfriend Marcus had turned this timeout into torment. Have you ever heard of the Toebiter? Marcus, a skinny, almost skeletal high schooler, was even more terrifying with his face shrouded with the shadows of the flashlight. I know all about the Toebiter, he carried on. Katie stood by the doorframe and occasionally exchanged a nervous smile with Marcus as he lowered his voice and laid out a profile of the monster. The words rolled out of his mouth like a thick fog rolling through town. The Toebiter sneaks into the bedrooms of little kids at night. Do you know why? That's not scary, Skylar protested. Oh, the Toebiter is all around, Marcus continued. Why do you think your mom and dad make you tuck your sheets in at the end of your bed when you make it? See, they're looking out for you. My mom does it because she doesn't want the cat to sneak under the covers at night, Skylar again interrupted. Brave. So very brave. You're right, you know. There's plenty of good reasons to tuck in your sheets. But you see, the Toebiter sees loose feet and toes hanging out of the covers, just slightly over the edge of the bed as a target of opportunity. You see, the Toebiter prefers and goes after little kids who try to sneak out and stay up all night. See, it's attracted to the weakness of kids who are extra tired the next night. And let me tell you, it doesn't matter how well all 10 of your little piggy toes are covered and tucked down. It won't stop it from doing what it does best. What does the Toebiter look like? Red stuttered as a look of fear crept across his face. Well, I think it looks a little different to every kid. But once you see it, it definitely has seen you. And then it'll go after whoever's the most tired. It'll give you subtle hints when it will strike. Even if you're not tired enough the first night, or even the second night after seeing it, it knows sooner or later your toes are ripe. For biting? Red stammered in terror. Ha! That's the thing. Once it comes for you in your bed, that's only the start of it. Okay, Skylar said in a nervous tone. This is BS. Skylar, Katie scolded her for the language. Don't say that. Does your mother let you use that language? It is BS. You caught us now let us go to sleep, Skylar insisted. Okay, Marcus talked over Katie. You can go to sleep. But go to sleep. Don't stay up all night or else the Toebiter will get you. And trust me, any encounter you have with a Toebiter will last forever. With that, I followed Skylar and Red. I followed them up the tall wooden staircase to Red's bedroom. Skylar called me out as I ran my hand up the banister. Don't do that. You'll get another splinter. I immediately removed my hand and continued up. I hated splinters. I hated having to dig them out with tweezers, or worse, soaking my hand in Epsom salt for hours and having that waterlogged feel all day. I overheard Marcus chuckle to Katie that he had bought them some fun time. Pfft. I had thought at the time, what fun is sitting on the couch together in cootie season? Red's head swung on a swivel as we trekked down the dark hallway to his room. He jumped as Skylar accidentally stepped on a squeaky floorboard. Red, this is all your fault, Skylar chastised him as she flew up to the top bunk of the bedroom bunk beds and turned on her smartphone. If you hadn't been whispering, go back, the entire time we were trying to sneak out, I would have caught a Charizard by now. Now all I can get in your stupid house is a bunch of stupid Zubats. I already have enough Zubats. Well, it's better than letting the Toebiter catch us, Red blurted back. There's no such thing as the Toebiter, Skylar and I echoed each other. I can prove it, Skylar said. How? I darted back. We can stay up all night like we planned to anyway, Skylar said back. If we don't see anything, then we're fine. Well, I don't think I can sleep now anyway, Red said. So that's what we did. We stayed up past midnight. We talked about other grade school legends like Bloody Mary, the Hookman in the car, the Finger Licker Killer, the Slender Man, and as minutes ticked close to the grade school impossible hour of 1 a.m., we felt like we could firmly put this legend of the Toebiter to bed, and we decided to sleep. Skylar had firm control of the top bunk, while Red slept on the bottom bunk. I fell asleep curled up in the little two-seater couch in the corner of Red's room. Despite our mutual affirmations about the non-existence of the Toebiter, we all had our feet covered by multiple blankets. I woke up sweating when the sun hit my face. I tossed off most of the blankets during the night and noticed my feet were well exposed, hanging over the armrest of the couch. I thought about it for a moment, but then I dismissed it. I just wanted to rest of the covers off of me because it was too hot. I felt pretty tired, and I was used to going to sleep no later than 9. Skylar was still asleep, and I noticed Red was gone. I woke up Skylar and told her Red was missing. She was slow to rise and reluctantly climbed down the ladder to help me search the house for him. It didn't take us long to find him. He was cowering between the toilet and the bathtub in the bathroom, with every light turned on. He let out a blood-curdling scream when we opened the door, and looked absolutely wild with his curly red hair resting on his face, with only his wide, searching eyes exposed through the curls. When he finally stopped screaming and yelling and crying hysterically, out of pure breathlessness, he tried to scamper to his feet, only to stumble into the sink on the other side of the bathroom. You saw the Toebiter, eh? I jumped a little as Skylar remained sure-footed as we turned to see Marcus eating an apple resting against the bathroom threshold. Now do you believe me? What did you do to him, Marcus? Why did you scare him so bad? You know, my mom is going to hear that you went into our room last night. I did nothing of the sort. I saw it. It wasn't Marcus. Red finally wheezed out. No, it was him. He probably put on a Halloween costume or something, too. Too bad I didn't wake up for him. I would have punched him where the sun don't shine, Skylar said. That, I interrupted, or you had a bad nightmare. I really needed to use the bathroom, and I didn't want to look weird by running all the way downstairs to use the other one right now. It can hide in the light, Red said. It's probably still here. While Skylar stared down Marcus, my eyes scanned the room. Marcus tossed up his arms, chomping on his apple as he walked backwards down the hall away from us. There was a lot of noise from Skylar, and eventually she had her parents pick her up early, and I followed suit. It was Sunday now, and while at least Skylar and I talked on chat, we didn't hear anything from Red, but we were confident he would show up for school on Monday. We didn't have any classes together on Monday, but we had the same lunch period. And I met up with Skylar, but no Red. Skylar and I texted Red multiple times during lunch, but we got no response. It was then that Skylar shared a photo with me. It was a picture of her shower door steamed over, but with the letters UNXT written small but clear in the condensation. I didn't see anything, Skylar said. If Marcus is right, I'll have to see it for it to see me. I mean, nothing happened all night, except, at some point Red flipped out, but you didn't see that, I didn't see that. And all I saw, actually, the entire night was just you getting up to go to the bathroom. I spit out my milk. I froze and gripped my lunch tray tight. What do you mean? I didn't get up all night. As a matter of fact, I thought I saw you climb down from the bed. Oh, okay, well, we both actually did see Red get up, and then he saw something and freaked out. No, I said, I saw you climb off the bunk and drop down. I'm too short, Skylar said. If I didn't take the ladder, I would probably break my ankle. Well, I definitely didn't go to the bathroom, because I held it all night, because I was afraid. I think we need to visit Red after school, I said, and Skylar agreed. We took our bikes over to Red's house again, and we found Katie and Marcus sitting on the porch holding hands. Katie play-hit Marcus as she got up from the porch swing and shuffled to the pile of leaves over to us. She told us that Red was sick and he was experiencing a lot of pain and couldn't walk. Marcus was clad in a leather jacket with circular smoky sunglasses. "You wanted to catch monsters. Now you'll see what happens when monsters catch us." Katie turned around, flipped off Marcus, who erupted in a loud cackle. Then she turned back to us. "Look, I'm sorry he's still carrying on with this joke. I'm sure my brother will be fine in a few days, okay? I'm sure he'd love to hear from you by text or video chat or something. Have a good night." "I don't know what you see in him," Skylar declared as we cycled away. Skylar and I hung out a bit longer. In fact, we went down to the abandoned train yard to catch Pokemon. We tried to contact Red, but he still didn't reply. It was getting late, around 7:30, and we headed to our respective homes. I ate dinner and did homework and almost forgot about everything going on when I got a video chat notice from Red to Skylar and myself. I picked up the feed. It was Red pointing his camera to a fire pit made of a ring of cinder blocks outside of his house. He was sobbing hysterically as he seemed to crawl one hand over the other to the bricks, and then he hoisted one of the bricks high as he could lift it. I have to do it. They won't stop. They're cracking like eggs." He leaned the camera over his bare foot and toes and then smashed the brick down on his foot. He let go an agonizing howl and dropped the camera into the ashes. We could hear Katie and Red's mom's voice as the video feed cut out. Before I could get a word into Skylar, who was still connected on the call, my dad startled me with a call for "lights out." When I protested, he threatened to take away my phone, and with that I shut off the phone, hoping to text Skylar again later. I wasn't able to get a hold of her the rest of the night. I was heartened the next morning when I got 4 texts on my phone. I accessed my inbox, but then my heart sank and chills ran over my entire body. All 4 texts were single letters from an unknown number. UNXT. The next day, Skylar wasn't in art class, and I sat alone at lunch sending out frantic strings of texts for Red and Skylar. I was anxious the entire day. Classes flew by as time to go home and go to sleep lurched ever closer. I couldn't eat dinner. I must have sent out over 100 texts and calls to Red and Skylar each. I was cautious when Skylar started to text back, but all I got were a series of images from weird angles. First was an overexposed blurry picture of her toes, followed by her hand gripping large, heavy metal kitchen scissors. The third and final image was the words, "Get them out," stained in blood on her carpet. I ran out of the house and biked over to Skylar's, but I just missed the ambulance leaving her house. I got a million texts and calls from my parents who wondered where I was and why I wasn't home for dinner. I biked home as fast as I could through the crisp autumn air. I had my phone taken away as punishment, as well as an early bedtime. I took the covers off my bed and retucked them in, as tightly as I could tuck them. I was ready for anything, but absolutely ready for nothing. After all, I thought to myself as seconds ticked away in the dark, Skylar was ready. She was more ready than anyone. She was the toughest person I knew. Try as I might, I was very, very tired. I barely got any sleep the last few days, and I was worn out from the intense bike rides. And I kept seeing Red crush his own toes with the cinder block, and Skylar trying to snip away all 10 of hers, one by one, in some bloody, raging tunnel vision fever, like racing through the aisles of a toy store. I was stressed and fading fast. I watched the foot of my bed. I watched for anything to cross in front of the beam of light streaming through the cracks of my door. When I wasn't watching that part of my room, my eyes darted to the dark outline of my closet doorframe and fixed on the long handle. Once in a while my eyes stirred toward my chest of drawers, which sometimes unnerved me anyway because of the resemblance of the knobs to eyeballs. I decided to cower under my sheets and turned to straining my ears to hear anything I could hear that was unusual. I was nearly asleep when I heard something brush against the far side of my bed. I could definitely hear something stirring. My mind flashed with terror and a moment of blinding fear. I launched my entire body with my comforter to the other side of the room and let out a loud howl calling for my dad. When my snare fell harmlessly to the floor without capturing the elusive form of the Toebiter, I spun around in all directions, looking for the source of the noise. Rusty, our little tortie cat, popped up on the bed. I felt all my fear vanish, and I decided to relax and pull the comforter over me again. I was a hot, sweaty mess, and I wrestled with the sheets to get comfortable again. I tried to entrench my head in the pillows, and that's when I felt something very strange. In the small gap between my headboard, the rest of the bed frame, and the wall, where my pillows sometimes got stuck, I felt a mass in the gap before the wall. It felt like cold meat straight from the refrigerator. The mass seemed to slither away up the wall past the headboard. I turned to lie on my back and saw a smoky, slightly darker shadow than the rest of my room snake across the ceiling before it deposited itself as a shimmying tube-like entity at the foot of my bed, stretching from the floor nearly to the ceiling, just outside of the light beam streaming through the door. My eyes crept up its translucent form, barely able to trace where it started and ended in the air. I could make out what looked like a flower-like head with multiple irregular teardrop-shaped petals floating between an oval and circle shape. Each petal seemed to fold into a long, wormish tentacle before expanding into a semicircle, almost like a Chinese fan unfolding. Each time then they would reform back into a tentacle. It would make a sharp, needle-like wisp, a pointy tip protrude from each of the worm-like appendages, while those entities seemed to just hang in the air like a tube of smoke. The most startling feature were the clearly human-like eyes which bobbed and weaved as if on springs at the top of its form. They were cocked off to either side, unfocused, pitiless, human, yet somehow all human all at once. I was utterly paralyzed with fear, completely unable to move, yell, or scream. I watched as the Toebiter seemed to enjoy dissecting me, dicing up all of my fear and then pouring it all over like a wolf eyes its kill. I could hear shuffled footsteps from down the hall, and then I watched my door open a crack. For a moment the entity seemed to vanish in the light, and Rusty ran out through the cracked door. As it began to shut again, the entity reappeared in full form in the darkness. I took a deep breath, knowing my dad, though not hearing my first yell, would definitely hear my next. But then the entity made its move. The maw of its tube-like structure widened like a parachute, falling over my bed, encapsulating me in the suffocating weight of cold, dead meat. I couldn't yell, scream, or move. I was just absolutely frozen and yet boiling in my own sweat. I could hear its voice inside of my head, and it sounded like millions of teeny little insectoid voices speaking at once. I bit your toes 2 days ago. I woke up screaming, and my mom and dad were at my door. The sun was streaming through the windows, but I still felt that grip and pressure on my face, chest, and toes. As they swarmed to my side, the feeling sloughed off, leaving me like my skin was waterlogged everywhere except for my toes. My toes felt like they were frozen ice pebbles compared to the rest of my foot. I leaned up and started to gasp and cough and heave until I threw up a little bit. And so, just like that, my parents said I was going to stay home from school today. I was on a countdown. I was on a timer, just like Red, just like Skylar. I noticed my toes were exposed when I woke up, off the edge of the bed. I still couldn't feel them, and it impacted my ability to walk. I put on socks, and slowly I started to feel something out of them. It felt like they were throbbing with pain. It felt like each of them was one giant popcorn kernel getting ready to burst. I asked both of my parents if they saw anything weird or felt anything unusual in them, but they both said no. Around midday, I had to take those socks off. My toes felt like they were going to balloon out of them. That's when I noticed not only were they visibly expanding and contracting like a frog's throat bulges in and out with each breath, but I noticed that they were changing color from slightly yellow to green and then back to something close to the fleshy pink tones. I walked awkwardly back to my mother on my heels to keep my toes from even brushing up against the carpet. I asked her how my toes looked now, and she said they all looked fine, and that I should get some rest. Rest was impossible. The mere thought of entering my room made my heart jump into my throat and made me gasp for air. But then again, my firecrackers were in there. The thought was stirring in my mind of blowing off my toes because each of them was a little agonizing toad unnaturally attached to my body. I went into the bathroom, and in the bright light, I could actually see into my toes, and instead of skin and bone, I could actually see through them in a translucent way, and I saw something swimming around inside each one of them. It had the faintest outline, but as I watched them, I could tell it was something of a smaller version of the original Toebiter. 10 more of those monsters could come popping out of my toes like I popped bubble wrap. I winced at the thought of it, and then I thought about blowing them up again. The pain in my toes surged, and I realized in time that I may not be able to climb the staircase back up to my room to retrieve my firecrackers, so I decided to go, and I gripped the banister as tight as I would use a rope to hoist myself up the stairs. I got 3/4 of the way up when my hand slipped on a rough spot and I got a splinter. I tried to pull it out, but a tiny shard was still visibly jammed in the upper layers of my flesh. Great, I thought to myself, now I have to blow my hand off too, because I'll be damned if I have to wait hours in Epsom salts to try to pry it loose with the tweezers. But then that was it. Then I had it. I scurried my way up the rest of the stairs and dropped myself into the bathtub and dumped the rest of the Epsom salt into the near boiling hot water that came streaming down from the faucet, and I plopped my toes in to soak. In a few minutes of barely being able to take the heat, one after another, a bright yellow pus began to ooze out between each of my toenails, sending 10 streams of yellow into the water. I started to feel like I had a 103-degree fever as little black wiggling tails erupted out from each toenail, each one announcing itself with a piercing, tooth-grating stab. My toes grew bigger and wider and eventually looking like they were going to sprout 10 meaty black earthworms from waterlogged feet. I took a tweezers from the medicine cabinet and dug under each toenail before squeezing out the entire little creature from each toe, watching with great relief and satisfaction as they swirled down the drain. With my toes slowly returning to normal shape, color, and feeling, I left the bathroom feeling entirely exhausted, feverish chills and covered in sweat. I met my mother in the hallway, and she asked me if I had just used a towel or just put on my clothes without drying after a shower. It was at that point that I fainted. A few days passed. The fever wore off, but I was still barely sleeping. I met up with Red and Skylar after they were released from their psychiatric observations. Suffering various injuries, including the loss of several toes each, I convinced them to join me in confronting Marcus, though we feared that somehow he too had evaporated into the wind, into the light, much like the Toebiter over my bed, because he was the Toebiter. But Skylar threatened him with her BB gun. He stopped and pled with us, saying that he couldn't run. Slipping off his boots, he revealed a collection of prosthetic toes alongside badly mangled real ones. So that was it. That was that. I'm in high school now, well past the Toebiter age. I'm going to therapy now, and writing this down is part of it. Although I escaped relatively unscathed compared to everyone else, victimized by the Toebiter, I still can't sleep with the lights off. I can't help but wonder what other monsters exist in the space between wakefulness and dreaming, and prey on the young and the daring.